I'm gonna show you guys a photo. This was Nick and I when we met in the 10th grade. This picture was taken in detention. I don't remember what I was there for. I do remember what he was there for. He played basketball, and in the middle of a basketball game, a ball went off the sideline, and he got tangled up with the opposing team's mascot, which was a giant frog, and he actually punched the mascot in his frog head. And I remember seeing that and being like, I really like that guy. So we became partners in crime then. A few months later, we sort of had our first failure as partners. We went to a high school football game to cheer on our team. Our team was pulling an amazing upset, and we had always watched ESPN games when the crowds rushed the field. And we're like, man, we got to do that. We got to rush the field. This is our chance. And sure enough, the clock hit 0. Me and him take off running. We thought everybody was going to follow us. Nobody followed us. It wasn't our field. It was an away game, and we had to run past the opposing team. So they were not very happy about these two guys running onto the field. They actually started chasing us. One of them did a WWE super slam, threw me on the ground. Nick came up to rescue me, tried to kick the guy away, slipped, and got kicked in the head and got 20 stitches. So our first taste of entrepreneurship. We had an idea, we took a risk, and we got kicked in the head. We went off to college in separate cities. I went to the University of Miami. He went to a school in California called Pomona College. The summer before our senior year, we got home. We were really excited because we had our entire summer planned out. Nick got a very prestigious internship at the International Monetary Fund. He was the more studious of the two of us. And I was going to do absolutely nothing. So I was going to sit home. I was going to play video games all day. My mom came in. She saw me in my sweatpants eating cereal. And she said, hey, get a job. The word of the day is job, J-O-B. You're not going to be sitting around doing nothing this summer. And I had all the typical jobs that college students had. I waited tables. I worked at the mall. I wanted to try something different. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I remember Nick telling me he was at his internship. And
yeah, I'm looking out to the next 20, 30, 40 years of my life, sitting in the internship at the International Monetary Fund, and I'm saying to myself, this is unfulfilling for me. I'm feeling like this guy in the middle of the cubicle. There's got to be something else. There's got to be something different. And by the sheer luck, Omar approached me that very first summer with an idea.
So my mom had this beat-up cargo van that she would use for her furniture store for essentially delivering stuff when people bought a sofa or something like that. And I asked if I could borrow the van and do some odd jobs around the neighborhood, mainly hauling junk. So invited Nick over, invited some other friends over, told them this harebrained idea that I was going to try to charge people money to pick up their junk. And I said, all we need is a name. And we sat there, we were drinking some Bud Light, our creativity got a little bit more and more out there, the more beers we drank. And my mom looked at us and was like, you know what, you guys are like the college hunks who haul junk. And we all kind of started laughing, and you could almost feel the earth move when you said that name. It was like, college hunks hauling junk, that's pretty good. So I ran upstairs, I printed out some computer flyers that said college hunks hauling junk, passed them around the neighborhood. 6 o'clock that evening, my cell phone rang. Lady on the other end said, is this the college hunks? It's like, oh yeah, this is the college hunks. How can I help you? Just have some junk. Okay, great. So showed up to her house. She showed me all this stuff in her basement that she needed hauled away. She asked me, how much is this going to cost? And everybody looked at me and I was like, I have no idea what to say. My mind was thinking $50. Somehow I said, $200? She said, great. And she handed $200 in my hand. And I stood there looking at that $200 thinking to myself, this is the most amount of money I've ever made in my life. I went home, I felt like I was P. Diddy. I was making it rain. I was like, I'm gonna quit my job, I'm gonna be a full-time trash man. But that's what we did that summer. We pretty much got up at 5 in the morning, worked till 8 o'clock at night. And it was the first time we found something we were passionate about. It's not that we were necessarily passionate about hauling junk, but it was the first time we came to the realization what entrepreneurship even really was. And then my senior year, I enrolled in an entrepreneurship class, and the professor announced that they were doing a business plan competition open to the entire University of Miami. I told some of my friends that I was thinking about entering a business plan for this idea called College Hunks Hauling Junk. And they said, man, that is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. You're never going to win that. So I was feeling pretty down on myself. I called Nick. I'm like, hey, man, I'm thinking about entering this business plan competition. They're giving out $36,000 in prize money. First place gets $10,000. If I finish in the top 25, I could get $500. I think maybe I could get like 24th. He's like, man, you can do it. you could win it, go for it, get out of the stands, run onto the field like we did that time in high school. So did the business plan, finished it on spring break of all places, submitted it, and then got into the final sort of round, and we had to present to a panel of judges, sort of like a Shark Tank, and presented it. Thought I did pretty good. I walked out of the room. One of the judges chased me out of the room, tapped me on the shoulder, and said, "Hey, that was a great idea. If you don't win, I want to go into business with you. Here's my business card." Handed me his business card. Walked back into the room, looked at his score sheet, and one of the big things they score you on is feasibility in real life. And he scored me a 6 out of 10. He kind of scratched his head. He's like, "I just chased this kid out of the room. I scored him a 6 out of 10. So he changed the score from a 6 to a 9, and the College Hunks business plan won first place by half a point, which is crazy because we never would have started the business. None of anything that happened after that with the business never would have happened had that judge not changed the score.
So Omar and I graduated from college. We actually got regular jobs, even with the business plan competition under the belt, with the summer of the cargo van. And I was very unfulfilled once again, sitting in that cubicle. So I emailed Omar, I said, "What's our timeline for starting this business on a full scale?" And he emailed me back, all capital letters, "My timeline's right now, exclamation point, let's do this." So this is Nick and Omar on our very first day on the job. You can see us bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, not really knowing what we were getting ourselves into. And there were a lot of skeptics when we told them what we were doing. You know, people said to us, "You're going to quit your jobs to do what? Haul junk? And the company's going to be called what? College Hunks? You know, are you really throwing away your college degree to start a trash business? Is that really what you're going to be embarking on?" And we used that as motivation, prove the doubters wrong, that we were going to be a successful business. But when we first started the business, we were doing all of the work ourselves, right? So we were driving the truck, we were answering the phones, we were hauling the junk, and we had the 800 number on the back of our truck routed to our cell phones. So people would call the 800 number to complain about erratic driving. And I'd be the one in the driver's seat apologizing when I'd answer the phone about this erratic driving that they saw on the road, you know, letting them know, "Hey, we don't condone that type of driving in our company. We'll tell those guys to be safer out on the road when they get back to the office." Probably fired ourselves at least 3 or 4 times that first summer. And we had aliases for all the different business roles within the company, even though it was just Nick and Omar. What were some of the names, Omar?
Like Jason Howie was our director of the call center. Veronica Alvaretti was our PR director. We had a real bulldog attorney, Rich Livingston. That was Nick, sending out all the mean emails with that alias.
So, you know, we really walked, talked, and acted like a much bigger business than we were from the very beginning, because that was our aspiration, to become a bigger business. But there was only so much that 2 individuals could move in a single day, and we started to burn out a little bit. We started to feel like we were hitting that glass ceiling, and one of our mentors recommended to us a book by Michael Gerber that's called The E-Myth Revisited. It's all about working on the business, not in the business. And that was really the next light bulb moment for us, is if we're ever going to have another truck, let alone another location, we need to start documenting how we do things, how we drive the truck, how we load it, how we greet our customers, how we wear the uniform. So that was really the initial foundation, I guess, initial framework for us to eventually expand the business into franchising. Now, our very first break, once we had grown a successful operation in DC, had kind of put a flag in the ground, said we're going to start franchising. Our first big break was our national television debut on ABC's Shark Tank. We were actually on the very first episode of the very first season. We saw an ad in Inc. magazine that said, "Looking for entrepreneurs to pitch a business idea for a TV show." So, you know, to Omar and I, who were sort of, you know, shameless self-promoters, we said, "Hey, that sounds like a pretty good idea to get the word out. And what are some other business ideas we've had over the years?" And at the time, we had this sister company that we thought we could pitch. So we went on television and we pitched this sister company. We were going to call it College Foxes Packing Boxes.
We can only come up with businesses that rhyme.
Yeah. So the Sharks didn't quite bite on that. They wanted equity in the College Hunks business, and we weren't really ready to give up equity in the business. And honestly, it was the very first episode, so the Sharks weren't celebrities yet. We didn't know who they were. We got an offer from Robert Herjavec, which we ended up turning down. And again, it was a great exposure to us about the power of publicity, the power of PR. And so we started following that train early on in our business. The next big PR hit was a Newsweek article called "College Kid to Millionaire." So this is after we had started franchising. We had some momentum going for us. And this Newsweek story profiled different businesses that had started in college that had gone on to be successful.
and had one of those scroll bars down at the bottom. So the other entrepreneurs who they profiled in this story was Bill Gates from Microsoft, Michael Dell from Dell Computers, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, Fred Smith from FedEx, I think the guys who started Google, and then there was Nick and Omar from College Hunks hauling junk. So it reminded me of this Sesame Street segment my daughter watches, where it's one of these things is not like the other one. So I think that's what the joke was on us, but maybe a few zeros missing from our balance sheet at the time compared to those tech moguls. But I think what it did do was it revalidated and reinstilled the confidence in us that we were doing something a little bit different. We were taking a very traditional business model, putting a creative wrapper of the brand, putting a focus on the client and customer experience, and that's what was allowing us to reach our levels of success. And we started becoming very intentional about the vision that we were trying to create. So one of our visions early on was to become recognized as a best place to work. And it wasn't just a matter of putting up ping pong tables and having cool snacks in the office, but it was really about surrounding our team members with this vision and this goal as well, and helping them and empowering our team members to realize, hey, if we're going to become a great workplace, it's not Nick and Omar making it a great workplace. It's upon each and every one of us to identify what are the criteria that it takes to be recognized as such, and then how do we have to start walking, talking, and acting like that as well. So as we think about in the audience our own businesses or teams that you represent, what is the vision for your respective role, for your respective business, for your respective brand? There's a quote from Stephen Covey in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Individuals, where he says, start with the end in mind. So if you think about your business venture as a road trip, you're packing up your bags, you're loading up the truck, and you're going to start driving. What is the destination that you're driving towards? What is it that you're trying to achieve? And how are you going to share that vision with the team members around you? So once we started recognizing the power of defining the future, we also came across the notion of a set of core values that we stand for and that we abide by and that we operate under, which we'll talk about momentarily. But first, we kind of hit a bit of a brick wall as we started hitting liftoff within our business.
The year was about 2000, 2008, 2009. We had about a dozen franchises. Everything was going great. I thought we were on this rocket ship. I was Googling what sports franchise I can buy in the next 5 years. I thought everything was perfect. And then all of a sudden, the housing collapsed. And it was 2008. We were in the middle of one of the worst economic recessions of all time. And obviously, if you can't afford to pay your mortgage, you're not going to pay someone to haul junk away. And business was hurting really, really bad. And each day was getting worse than the day before. And I remember kind of having these meetings. It was just a couple of us in the room being like, man, I don't even know if we're going to be able to keep the lights on, let alone stay open. And we started coming up with, as Nick would say, throwing spaghetti against the wall. One day he came home. We were actually roommates at the time, and I had bought a bunch of locks.
Omar had a big pile of boxes of door locks. I said, what are these door locks? He said, we're going to be doing property preservation now. We're going to be changing out door locks of foreclosure properties, and we're going to be winterizing and cleaning houses. And it was a complete waste of time, money, and energy and focus, but we were becoming desperate.
Yeah. We tried pressure washing. We were trying a whole lot of different things. And that's kind of when we stumbled on moving was the
Moving was the next thing, but before we talk about that, I got to say, desperate times called for desperate measures. So we've all seen the Nickelback memes, and we've all heard of Airbnb. So this was in 2009, and Omar and I were roommates, as he mentioned. We were living in a house that was, we were actually renting from a home builder who was trying to sell the house, but he couldn't sell it because he had built it for more than it was worth at the time. And this was when Super Bowl was now coming to Tampa. And if you guys were around at that time here in Tampa, there was a shortage of hotels in Tampa. So we heard about this hotel shortage, and Airbnb didn't exist yet. So we put our heads together and we said, hey, we've got an idea. Let's reach out to realtors and have them start marketing this house we're renting for a rental over Super Bowl weekend. And lo and behold, somehow word got out to Nickelback's management or agent, or I don't know, whatever the case may be. Nickelback rented the house from us for that Super Bowl weekend. We made more that weekend that paid for about 3 months of our rent, so we were able to, keep the lights on for another 3 months. And I always tell the story. There was one time we had an after party. This was back in our bachelor days. We had an after party months later at that house, and a handful of the people that came into the house was like, "Wait a minute, I've been here before. This is Nickelback's house." So we're like, "No, it's not Nickelback's house. This is our house. We just rented it to them for Super Bowl weekend." But again, we were chasing all these different ideas, and most business owners, they don't die from a lack of opportunity. They don't go out of business from a lack of opportunity. They go out of business from having too many opportunities. So, when Airbnb came out and became a unicorn billion-dollar business, we said to ourselves, man, we had that idea when we rented the house out to Nickelback. We could have been Airbnb, but, fortunately we didn't take that route. Instead, we found the moving service as an opportunity to expand our College Hunks brand.
So yeah, one of the obvious things that we were looking right at was people would always call us for moving, and we were turning that business away. And one day we said, well, why don't we just start saying, yes, it's the middle of the recession, our franchisees are struggling, let's start offering moving services. The challenge is there's hundreds of movers. It's sort of known as a pretty bad industry that's littered with mediocrity. It's very commoditized. So our biggest issue with it was like, well, how are we going to stand out? How are we going to be different? How are we going to compete with all of these other moving companies that are out there? And we started to do some research and look at other brands that are truly loved that are in very competitive industries. You look at Southwest Airlines, lots of airlines, very commoditized, but Southwest Airlines is the only one that turns a profit quarter after quarter. What do they do that's different? What does Netflix do different than Blockbuster? What does Harley Davidson do? What does Apple and Guinness do? What do these brands that are truly loved do that's different? And what we found is that they were purpose-driven. And by purpose-driven, we mean that everything they did, every decision they made was about a fundamental purpose that they embodied across their entire organization. And when you start to compare the purpose-driven companies to the revenue-driven companies, you start to see some big differences. And there's a big difference between a company's purpose and a mission statement, which you'll see here. Harley Davidson's purpose is to ride your heritage. And that gives me goosebumps. And my heritage has nothing to do with riding Harleys. But imagine what that does for someone whose dad rode Harleys and whose dad rode Harleys, right? That gets passed down generation to generation. Netflix is project a new experience. They want to redefine and reshape the way people watch television shows and movies. Blockbuster, their mission was media entertainment, local convenience. Okay, that could be a sports bar. And when you see 10 years ago where was Netflix and where was Blockbuster, we all know where those two companies are. Guinness is Brew a Connection, and then you got Budweiser. Now, a lot of people will look at that and say, well, what's your point? There's a lot of revenue-driven companies that make a lot of money. Budweiser makes a lot of money. What's the benefit of being purpose-driven? And it's true. You don't have to be purpose-driven to make money, but when you think about how many commercials you see for Bud Light versus all of those companies, right? There's more Bud Light commercials than all of those companies combined because they have to spend millions and millions of dollars trying to convince you to buy their product, whereas the purpose-driven companies have brand lovers that tell you which product to buy. So you can go to the next slide. And so really what purpose-driven companies embody, it's all the same thing. They might say it differently, but it's all about building relationships and creating an experience. And this is a set of rules that purpose-driven companies follow. The first one is they speak to their brand lovers. They spend more money on client experience than on advertising. They deliver on their brand promise. And the most important one is they have to have 100% commitment from everyone in the organization. So this is a great story we like to tell. This was one of our movers. His name is Caesar. He was doing a move at an assisted living facility. The elevator got stuck, and he was with an elderly woman that could not stand for a long period of time. So he actually got on his hands and knees and had her sit on his back for 30 minutes until the fire department arrived. And when they pried the door open, someone snapped this photo, and it got posted online. It went viral all over the world. Japan, Russia, people were talking about this kid Caesar that did this. And I always like to say, there is nowhere in the operations manual that says when you're stuck in an elevator, you got to get on your hands and knees and form a human chair. Thank you, Nick. And I'm a lot heavier than
30 minutes of that would have been a long time, so you got to give Caesar a lot of credit on that.
But there's nowhere in the operations manual that says when you're stuck in an elevator with an elderly woman, do that. But when you hire for attitude and you train for skill and you hire people that buy into your company purpose, and our company purpose is to move the world, these things start to happen organically by themselves. And when you go to a mall and you see a Harley Davidson store that sells everything but motorcycles, right? You got to think to yourself, what do they do that's different? People will tattoo Harley Davidson on their arm. Why do people wait in line for Starbucks for a $7 cup of coffee when you can arguably get the same cup of coffee at 7-Eleven for $1?
And we did recently, we don't advocate it, but we have had some people tattoo the College Hunks logo on their arm, which is not advocated. I don't know.
I don't know if they thought that was job security or if they just thought that was something cool. But I think to Omar's point, it's really a manifestation of becoming a purpose-driven, values-based organization where the team members or the clients start to really believe in what the company stands for beyond just the service or product that it delivers. And it doesn't happen overnight. It happens over consistent focus and intention over time, and it's ultimately a manifestation of the vision and the purpose and the values being shared by everyone in the organization, not just with everyone in the organization. The message that we try to impart to our team members, all of the hunks around the country, is you are the brand. You are the face of the organization, not just us as the founders, but everybody within the organization as well. And one of our core values is always branding, and sometimes we've pushed that to a little bit of an extreme edge where we've had to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. It's kind of fitting that we have our College Hunks truck parked outside of the stadium here for this event. When the Washington National Stadium was first opening, it was the grand opening of the Washington National Stadium up in D.C. Omar and I drove our College Hunks truck down there thinking this could be a great way to get some brand exposure, visibility of the truck. And we actually convinced one of the security officers that we were there to pick up trash for the event. So he led us through the security barricade, and we ended up parking our College Hunks truck right at the entrance of the arena where all the fans were walking in. And I think about midway through the game, he realized that we had sort of fudged our way in there. He was none too happy. We had to do a lot of apologizing in that case. But ultimately, the always branding mantra and mindset has to be represented and lived by every entrepreneur, every business leader, every team leader, if you're going to have your team follow suit.
So one thing that we track every day within our organization is client experience or client happiness. And we do something called a Net Promoter Score. So it's essentially asking the client on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer College Hunks to your friends and family? And College Hunks actually scores higher on our NPS score than some very, very successful client experience focused companies like Costco and Nordstrom and Amazon. And it's pretty wild to think that moving and buying an iPhone could even be on the same playing field because it's one of the most stressful things in someone's life. And so that's really a testament to what Nick talked about, buying into that brand promise. And that's something we track every day across our entire organization.
Yeah, and so what gets measured in business gets managed. And it's got to be more than just a catchy name or a catchy brand. A book that was really influential for us was a book called The Purple Cow by Seth Godin. And the idea of that book is if you're driving down a country road out in Plant City or whatever, you see a bunch of brown cows. You've seen that before, you're going to keep driving. But if there's a purple cow out in the field, you're going to pull over, you're going to take pictures of it, you're going to put it on your social media, you're going to tell your friends and neighbors about it because it's about being different or remarkable or unique. And so when we first started, we thought, hey, the name is different, the colors are bright and orange and green, that's a pattern interrupt, it captures people's attention. But ultimately, it had to be the service experience that the team members experience within the organization and that the clients experience when they receive service from their items being hauled away or their stuff being moved that's going to create the loyalty and the brand loyalty that ultimately allows a business to thrive over time. A couple other pointers that I like to always talk about when speaking to business leaders is don't shy away from being promotional about your organization. A lot of people feel somewhat of a stigma if they're selling their products or services like they're bothering somebody. And that's because we have this mindset of the, kind of shisty snake oil salesman. But really, if you have a product or a service that's helping somebody, then you need to be willing and excited to go out and share that. And I think a great quote I heard from one of my mentors is, when you're selling, you feel like you're doing something to somebody, but when you're helping, you're doing something for someone. So think about what it is with your own product or your service that really provides a solution and helps, and don't be afraid to go out and help that individual. Standing on the stage here at this tech conference, we all get enamored with the unicorns, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Snapchats, whatever the case may be. And there's a tendency to want to compare, how is my success doing compared to those? And, there's a saying out there that when you compare, you despair. If you're trying to look at what everybody else is doing and how everybody else is doing, you're going to start to feel somewhat inadequate, and you're going to lose sight. You're going to try to shortcut the success. And I'd be lying if I said Omar and I didn't try and do that over the years when we'd hear these crazy stories. But becoming a unicorn is the equivalent of winning a lottery. And that doesn't just happen to anybody or everybody. So we can't be so enamored with these tech unicorns and feel like we're not achieving whatever levels of success that we're having. I saw an interview with Mark Cuban, the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and he said the 3 keys to success is, number 1, there's no shortcuts. Number 2, if you think you're working hard enough, you're not. And number 3, you have to define your own definition of success. You can't let somebody else's external definition create that for you. And so if you look at some of those iconic brands that we've talked about that we are aspiring to be like, a Starbucks took 25 years before they really hit their 10x tipping point. Apple, same thing, 25 years before they hit their 10x tipping point. And College Hunks, after 10 years, we were doing about 25 million in annual sales. 5 years later, we're now close to 150 million in annual sales. So we're starting to hit our tipping point as well. It takes patience. It takes patience, persistence, and perseverance. I describe ourselves as a 15-year overnight success. And the other thing I want to talk about is there is a tendency to start to get overwhelmed when you're embarking on a venture, either in entrepreneurship or in a professional realm as a business leader. And the last thing you want to do is get complacent and get lazy. And so one of the mantras we have for ourselves is to stay hungry and stay humble. And you come to a conference or an event like this, and it's great. You get a lot of information. Sometimes it feels like you're, it's taking information from a fire hose. You got all these great notes, business cards to follow up with, different opportunities or connections that you met. But you get home and you kind of feel overwhelmed, and maybe your first instinct is to sit on the couch and just veg out a little bit. And I encourage and implore you as you leave after this conference to take some action and put some effort into some of the things that you've learned.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We have a saying that the magic happens when you step out of your comfort zone. And I think any business leader has that duty to their team members to push them out of their comfort zone, because that's where opportunities get created. My comfort zone that summer before our senior year was exactly what that cat was doing, sitting on the couch doing nothing. It wasn't driving around in a van with no air conditioning hauling junk. So really getting out of the comfort zone is something that all leaders and all business folks should do.
So as you think about, your takeaway from this conference, if you think about your takeaway from Nick and Omar's talk here, what are 1 or 2 nuggets or ideas that you've learned or maybe been reinforced of things you already knew, but just reminded that you want to take into your professional realm as a leader back in your respective field. So the homework assignment that Omar and I have for you guys is to take action. But before we do that, I always like we do a little giveaway at our talks. So Omar and I actually co-authored a book. It's entitled Effortless Entrepreneur. It's available on Amazon, but we're giving one away here to anybody in the audience who would like it. So who would like this book? Anybody can have it. Anybody at all, whatsoever. I saw this would get up first. Give her a round of applause. What was your name? Anishai? Anishai, what did she do? She took action, right? And the most interesting thing is, some of the action you take, you're going to get kicked in the head, like Omar described at the beginning when we ran onto the field in high school our senior year. The outcome was not what we were anticipating, or certainly not what we envisioned. Business and entrepreneurship is not linear. Nothing just happens continuously and successfully. But you got to be willing to step out there and take action, because if you want to have the results that you're looking for, you got to be doing that as well. So I want to leave you with this thought, and I want to make sure we've got probably maybe time for 1 or 2 questions. I want to leave you with this thought. If you want to have the things that other people don't, you have to be willing to do the things that other people won't. So thank you guys very much for your time today. And I do see a hand up in the audience. Yes, sir. So the question is, as co-founders and partners, that you always hear about the first fight. Did we ever have that first fight, and how do we handle it? You know, it's funny. I think the key to Omar and my success as partners is having a foundation of trust and being willing to have healthy conflict and not take things personally after that conflict erupts. Our vision and values have always been in alignment. I can't tell you the first fight. I can tell you we've had many fights, many of which, because of our friendship that existed prior to our business partnership, many of these fights did escalate to near physical, or in some cases physical altercations. You heard about me punching the frog mascot in high school, so I had a pretty short fuse in my youth. But I remember that I think the very first fight was when we were still on the trucks ourselves. We were arguing over who was going to go empty out the truck that morning at the dump site or the transfer station. I think we had both been out the night before, so we were both probably tired, maybe a little hungover, and we were, you know, throwing the keys at one another, saying, "No, you go take the truck. No, you go take the truck." And that was probably the very first fight. But the great thing about partnerships that we've been able to have is we've been able to celebrate the highs together, support each other in the lows, and I think the most important thing is, regardless of disagreements or petty arguments, or in that case, you know, near physical altercation, we get back to business because our vision and our values are always in alignment. I think time for one more question. Yes. So the question is around branding and how do we dial into the brand around our ideal customer. You know, some of it is through trial and error. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. So for me, some of it's through trial and error. Some of it is through asking customers what they like. You know, when we first got started, we knew that the female was the household decision maker and that trust and care were emotions that really mattered. And so the name was kind of fun and playful and quirky. We redefined the word HUNKS, and so we made that into an acronym as part of our brand promise that stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. And so the idea there is that it kind of elicits that trust and care for our clients. And so I think it's you know, having the vision of what it is that how you're helping people, and then how you position the brand that it's going to appeal. Now, we're a consumer brand. Obviously, it's different for a business-to-business brand. Some of the emotions that you're looking to evoke might be a little bit different in that regard as well. So I think that's great. I appreciate everybody's time today, and you got our contact information here if you'd like to get in touch with us. Thank you very much.